So the Xiaomi 12X, let's discuss the phone on how it held up in terms of updates, in terms of just general support for the phone itself. And of course, if this is still a phone that you should consider, especially with prices dropping, this could be a really interesting deal if you want a compact phone compared to some other phones out there. Anyway, let's dive into the video itself. The Xiaomi 12X is probably one phone that held its value best out of all the Xiaomi devices that I've tested this year. While prices are down, it is harder to get it for around 400 euros these days. Again, holding that value pretty well. And it adds a lot to the question whether it's worth it or not to buy a phone like this day. But let's discuss something that I think it does pretty well. To begin with, it is all premium material. The frame is of course metal, and of course you do have a glass back as well. And just like the flagship version of it, the 12 Pro, it does have a curved display. This is something that you either like or don't, but it does look a little bit more premium and sleek because of it. The big difference, however, compared to the brick brother is the camera setup and the CPU. The CPU, however, is one of the reasons why I actually really like it, because of that Snapdragon 870 inside being a very efficient chip. Meaning it doesn't heat up anywhere near modern CPUs inside your phone, which results in less throttling and results in better battery life, because heat will affect battery life. Till this day, out of the phones that I've used in 2022, this by some margin has the best battery life out there. I can easily make it till the end of the day, and sometimes I can even make it 2 days, with a screen on time reaching about 12 hours. And this is not because of a huge battery inside, because it only has a 4500 mAh battery, which again isn't very large compared to some other phones out there. And if you do need to charge it up, yes, you get that 67 watt charger included. And it doesn't cheap out on memory either, having of course UFS 3.1 options between 128GB and of course 256GB. Though you cannot extend that via a micro SD, which is a real shame, and also you don't have a 3.5mm headphone jack, which actually is something that I really hate about modern phones. Though in return I will have to say that you also only have a USB 2.0, which is a shame. Then we have to talk about the display as well, which adds to that premium experience. You have a 6.28 inch AMOLED display that is an excellent one, with great viewing angles, good colors, and of course 1100 nits of peak brightness, making it great to use in any condition. And of course smooth as well, with a 120Hz refresh rate. And while it has a Full HD Plus resolution, it still looks sharp. Now, I gave plenty of praises, but there are some things you have to count into this. Not only are there more phones coming out with a very similar experience and possibly better for the same price, there are still things that have me worried, and that's the updates. Now, the Xiaomi 12X did come out with Android 11, which of course is now running on Android 12, but in the last few months it did get very little updates delivered. While it's promised to get a 2-year update in terms of major updates where it runs at the end on Android 13, it doesn't seem to, for instance, have your monthly security updates, with it now running on the latest update of August of 2022, which is a security update, with me recording this in the middle of November. This doesn't bode well in terms of updates for the device itself. So let's address the camera as well. The Xiaomi 12X comes with a 50 megapixel main sensor with a 1.9 aperture and a 1/156 inch sensor size. The ultra wide is a 13 megapixel sensor with a 2.4 aperture and 120 degrees field of view, and of course a 1/3.06 inch sensor size. And next to that we have a 5 megapixel telephoto macro with a 2.4 aperture as well. In terms of camera experience, well, it doesn't fit the flagship experience, where it comes down to having a more saturated look and a brighter approach. It still performs well overall. You get plenty of detail, a good dynamic range, and the capability to record videos up to 8K and 24 frames per second. And in low light, it's not a slouch either, performing pretty solid here. And the ultra wide is pretty decent here as well, with pretty good dynamic range, but overall I will have to say that the difference between the two sensors is noticeable. The telephoto macro isn't the worst here, but it is still a 5 megapixel resolution, but you can take some good macro shots with it. Overall, the camera performance I would say fits the pricing, if not a little bit above it, and I think it still holds its own against other phones around the price, if not better. Though granted, as stated, it does depend on your preference of processing, where for me, I feel like it's a little bit too bright. Now the reason I would advise a device like this really depends on the user. There are some things that I truly like about it. You do get features like NFC, infrared, of course dual speakers tuned by Harman Kardon, which gives excellent audio quality, and of course as stated premium build material. There are some things that goes against it, like for instance of course the updates itself. And then of course one of the main reasons I would advise a phone like this is because of the smaller size compared to a lot of phones out there. But also because of the battery life. Battery life seriously is one of the reasons I would say that this phone excels. Why I really like it. I really don't have to worry about it. Next to those features that I mentioned before. There are some things as stated that are down to preference, but those features are for me the reason I would advise a phone like this. Why I wouldn't is basically down to the updates itself and of course the USB 2.0. It's a bit of a shame to see that. And in terms of fingerprint scanner, having that 2D fingerprint scanner isn't ideal. I think for a phone like this, it would have been better to put that in the power button itself. It makes a lot more sense for a phone with this kind of price tag. And for my personal preference, it really is a shame to not see a micro SD in a phone like this, and of course the 3.5mm headphone jack. No matter what people say, the 3.5mm headphone jack simply is superior compared to Bluetooth in terms of audio recording and of course audio experience. When you are playing music, the 3.5mm headphone jack is better, and not to mention there's no latency and of course no charging as well. But again, this is a personal preference for myself. So at the end, the Xiaomi 12X, I still like this device. The compact design compared to other phones is really good, and I do think they made an excellent phone for people who want a little bit of a smaller phone. I know it's not sub 6 inches which would be ideal for a phone like this, but still in terms of comparing to others, it's still quite a small device. And overall for that you get a phone that has good quality, great speakers, and of course a pretty good camera setup as well. And of course the display, well, that's also excellent. There is one thing that I feel like I might be worrying about a little bit. It's updates. It's been slow on the Xiaomi 12X in terms of updates, and I feel like that's something that you can generally worry about. Xiaomi doesn't have the best track record in terms of updates, so I do hope that the support continues for the phone itself, but it is somewhat worrying to see that it doesn't get regular updates compared to some other Xiaomi devices that I have. Anyway, the Xiaomi 12X, depending on the price, is still an excellent device, and I really do still love that Snapdragon 870 inside. And overall, again, if you want a more compact phone, this one just makes sense. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video, and of course if you did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe and all that stuff, and talk to you guys in the next.